All right,
And we're
Isabel.
live.
Yes. So this is the Trace, the Trace movie show, the Trace movie podcast, and I'm here with Isabel. Isabel, is the right way to pronounce your last name?
Bobbage.
Bobbich.
Yes.
Yes. So Isabel is a fellow movie lover.
Yep.
And
Some would say cinephile.
absolutely.
Yep.
Cinephiles right here. Love of film.
Yeah, truly. A way of life, quite frankly.
Yes. And so Isabel had heard that I was interested in doing some movies review stuff on YouTube, and so it's like, let's do something together. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. And what's the first movie that comes to mind that we both love?
And this is and we are doing, yes, David Lynch, Fire Walk with Me, and with Lynch's passing recently, which has been like astounding to see the reactions.
Yeah.
The amount of love, not just from, I expected it from certain people, but the outpouring.
Yeah, from people you don't expect to even be Lynch fans too, you know?
Yep.
It goes to show that he really had something for everybody, even though you think of him as quite a niche creator, but he really touched a lot of people.
Yeah, and it seems like it's an example of a life that just keeping at it, how much we respect people that just, not for the money or the fame or whatever.
Yeah.
And whether he's making a 17-hour film or a couch.
Yeah. Yeah, or a piece of wood.
Yeah, even people that would never watch Blue Velvet or Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them love him. And also like I showed my mom The Straight Story.
Yeah.
And she loved it like everyone does.
And there's almost a revival of his films, not necessarily with just his passing, but via social media and TikTok, and a lot of young people discovering him for the first time, just with TikTok kind of making Twin Peaks viral a little bit again.
Mm-hmm.
I discovered Twin Peaks via Tumblr back in the day.
Wow.
And just through some beautiful images of a dreamy landscape that made me want to check it out. Yeah. And I think a lot of kids now, that's happening to them.
And especially I would imagine for younger people who are have so many things to worry about.
Yeah. And
also everything about life is so based around money and making money.
Yeah.
And even young, like teenagers having the desire to be professional YouTubers and stuff. And Lynch has this thing of like a reminder that also you can make things just because you want to.
Yeah. You don't have to commodify your passion. And I think that's a little bit of a radical belief nowadays.
Yes.
Specifically in cities where, like LA, for example, I was just there, and a lot of people were like, what do you do? It was like, oh, I like to take pictures. I like to make movies. It's like, oh, have you ever thought about doing that for a living?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, but I don't want to.
And also what is lost?
Yeah.
In just for the pursuit of money. And it's like, obviously, if you can get paid to do what you love.
Yeah, by all means.
Please, that's the dream. And Lynch accomplished the dream.
Yeah.
But like Lynch would not have accomplished that dream if he didn't spend seemingly 5 wasted years making his first film. Yeah. Like he tells the story when he was doing Eraserhead, that because he got divorced during the making of Eraserhead too.
Yeah, the first time.
Yeah, the first time. Yeah. That his dad and his brother came to him and said that he needed to stop.
Yeah.
And just like support his child. And you're like, I mean, yeah. But he also believed in something. And all accounts, he's a wonderful parent.
Yes.
His kids love him. He works with them and everything.
Yeah.
But for people nowadays, the Eraserhead story,
it's so in tune with what he was experiencing at the time and what so many people experience.
And for people, and if you just love making things, like he never expected Eraserhead to, did he even think it was going to get barely seen?
Well, it's a movie that you would, just looking at it first glance at the time, you wouldn't expect it to be such a hit as it was.
And that's the midnight movies at the time, Rocky Horror and John Waters movies. And he's an inspiring character. And but also, so there's like the outpouring of love for Lynch with his
Mhm.
passing across the board.
Yeah.
Also, for those of us who are like where the movies aren't just a good time,
Mm.
where movies are like a way of life, basically. I think of
A
religion,
religion.
exactly, cinema as religion, as a religious discipline.
Mhm.
For people like us, Lynch is one of those characters that there's just not that many of them that
We
you can
might
even
not
name.
ever have somebody like that again
Well, it's
in our life.
it's in the tradition of like I saw a picture with him and Agnes Varda
Yeah.
the other day, right? Like of like when you look at her filmography,
Mhm.
or of course the Kubrick, or like these certain people that when you look at like what like Jane Campion is accomplishing at this point,
Yeah.
you know, these singular kind of careers,
Mhm.
but there's just not that many of them. And Lynch crosses over for horror fans,
Yeah.
certainly, but not, you can be art house,
Yeah.
you can like surreal comedy,
Yep.
um, or just
Detective procedural.
noirs,
Yeah.
yeah, classic Hollywood.
Yeah.
So his movies do,
Romance, arguably.
yes, eroticism,
Yeah.
certainly, and people, you know, even people that like violent movies.
Yes.
He's got, or people who like fucked up movies, even though Lynch does not.
Weird movies.
Yeah, and Lynch is not trying to do that. He does not do shock value
Mhm.
just for the sake. He's not Marilyn Manson or whatever.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
He's not Rob Zombie.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Anyways, Eli Roth, not that kind of filmmaker. Much love to everybody making movies, right? But what I've noticed is like the people that really love Lynch, there's a bond more than ever now.
Yeah.
Because of this.
Mhm.
And I've seen how many of my friendships, like Lynch is like this connector.
It brings people together. Because if you say like, oh, I like David Lynch, it kind of says everything you need to know.
You're like, I have a friend
Exactly.
here.
Exactly. Kind of in a way like religion. Like how a lot of people connect via religion. It's like, oh, you go to this church, that's everything I need to know. Like we're connected now.
It's a common bonding experience.
Lynch is that for a lot of people.
And that's the case with us.
Yeah, literally.
With our friendship.
Exactly.
So let's just talk about how we encountered this movie. Fire Walk with Me is the movie that we're doing today, 1992. We'll talk about the context here a little bit more of like when this movie came out and how it was received, things like that. But how did you come across? How did you get to Fire Walk with Me?
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't remember the first time I watched the film. I was shown the pilot of the series in high school by my high school boyfriend. And he was like, hey, like that week prior, he had showed me the Holy Mountain. Oh. And he was like, I have this other thing I think you'd like. And so he showed me the pilot. And at first I was a little bit like, I don't know how I feel about this. But it wasn't until years later that I revisited it and it truly touched me. But my most memorable experience with Fire Walk with Me, and what I would consider the first time seeing it, was I went to the SAM and saw it with Cheryl Lee and a couple other cast members doing a Q&A beforehand. And that was the time that it really touched me the most, I think. And I realized that this sort of film, this quote-unquote prequel, is quite unique in a world of prequels nowadays.
Yeah.
Where it's almost this weird, angry relationship between the director and the viewer, being like, here's a prequel, here's everything you know about the show or the previous films is wrong. And despite the content of Fire Walk with Me, it felt like such respect was being given from Lynch to the viewer, giving us this, not necessarily a puzzle, but this piece of media that is reminding us of who this story is about and the respect that she deserves and the respect that all of the missing women deserve, like starting the film with Teresa Banks.
Yep.
And it made me love the show a lot more.
Yeah.
And appreciate it a lot more. And I think that's what a good prequel should do.
And all that stuff. We're going to get into like a
course.
lot of the things that you brought up there.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, for me, it was, I have a 17-year-old kid, Dylan, and Dylan currently watching Twin Peaks with his girlfriend who hasn't seen it. So,
I was around 17 when I first watched it.
Yeah. And he's Dylan's really excited for them to watch Firewalk with Me. They're in the middle of season 2 right now.
Great.
Hang in
keep going.
there.
Keep going.
That's right. Hang in there. It'll come around.
Yeah.
So when Dylan was born, his mom and I, we were like, we like decided to watch Twin Peaks. I had seen a lot of the Lynch films, but I had not seen Twin Peaks. And we were like, let's just watch the whole thing. Well, you're stuck at home a lot of the time, and I was able to be at home for those first few months a lot, which was awesome. But so I always associate watching Twin Peaks with the birth of my one and only beautiful child. Yeah. So yet again, another Lynch like deep, thing. And so I, like everyone, thoroughly enjoyed season 1, and then the first chunk of season 2, and then it drops. But then the last like 5 episodes of season 2,
because Lynch came back.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's as good as anything. The whole thing. So, but at this time, this is 2007.
Wow.
Firewalk with Me had not had its reassessment really.
Yeah.
And so when I was reading about it, everything I read was that it was like a disaster and a failure. And so when we were going to watch it, my expectations were like, I still didn't have the full, I loved Lynch, but I didn't have like the depth of relationship that I would develop. Right.
Yeah.
And so when we watched Firewalk with Me, it was astounding.
Yeah.
I hadn't even really seen anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Even since then, I've seen more like movies that deal with sexual assault or something. There's a lot of good movies that
tackle that issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard different people, I've heard different like feminist critics talk about how it's a part of sexual assault's a part of life. Like it does, sometimes it needs to be in a movie if it's done respectfully or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes really cathartic and healing for folks that have experienced any kind of, whether it be rape, incest, any kind of really painful, tragic thing, just like any tragic event that humans undergo. I think it can be really cathartic to see it on screen and healing, and a reminder of you're not alone. And I think that's kind of Firewalk with Me's soul, is that you are not alone.
Yeah.
You'll never be alone. Wish I could tell Laura that.
Well, and we're going to do spoilers. So
yes, spoiler alert.
Because right away I'm like thinking of the ending.
You should watch this movie.
Yeah. So there you have the spoiler. So spoiler alert. So we will spoil it.
Yes.
But it was strange too. I probably want to get into this a little bit more later, but I was thinking about how Firewalk with Me it's almost a rape revenge movie. Like it's not, but it weirdly it kind of is.
It kind of is, because the entirety of the series, majority of the series, I'll say, actually, Leland is this, we're so sympathetic towards him. He's a grieving father. He's almost silly in this tragic loss of his daughter. And we feel bad for him.
Yes.
And the beginning of Firewalk with Me, as soon as it starts, we're seeing static and the TV is being smashed and we're hearing Laura scream. It's Lynch is telling us we're doing away with that for now.
Yeah.
And he is a monster. Because he's always been that.
And all the cutesy fun stuff in Twin Peaks. Not that Firewalk with Me isn't funny. I mean,
there's moments of silliness.
It is kind of funny. Yeah. But not in the way that the show was. It doesn't have as much as the soap opera.
Well, you've seen The Missing Pieces.
Yeah.
There's a lot of silly moments that I think the right decision that Mary Sweeney, right, the editor, has cut.
Yeah.
To remove those like silly Lucy moments. It's like, or even Mandy and just the police station in general.
The whole really long fight that he has with the sheriff.
delicately pulling that from the film, because it in no means saying that those characters are unimportant to the Twin Peaks universe, but this movie is about an abused girl.
Yeah.
And Lynch sees that and is realizing that, and which I just have utmost respect that he kept that through the film. Easily producers would be like, this, we don't need this movie.
That's right. Yeah, the only parts of the missing pieces that I do wish were in the movie is every Bowie.
Yeah.
Every single Bowie scene.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Lynch, the passing of Lynch, the only person in recent history that I can think of that had that kind of
Bowie,
yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what kind of music you like. You like Bowie. Like,
exactly.
And have you ever met anyone ever that said they didn't like David Bowie?
Yeah. I
never heard such a thing.
Yeah, Lynch's passing reminds me so much of that, because I don't know, unfortunately nowadays, whenever you see like you wake up in the morning, you see an Instagram post of, like me just a moment ago, Marianne Faithfull just passed away. Later in the day, you start scrolling on social media again and you see all these things about like, oh, they were like this, they did this, everyone forgot that they did this, and the discourse is turned towards almost bashing this person who just died. But what I noticed with Bowie and with Lynch, I haven't seen really any of that.
Yeah. It's crazy. The Lynch's reputation at the end of his life was like at its peak, basically. The other thing I would just say about personal experience with this movie is like, I also was fortunate to get to see a screening with Cheryl Lee, who, by the way, really knowingly carries Laura with her, in the sense
she doesn't watch the film.
She doesn't watch it, and she knows that she is a symbol for people who have experienced sexual assault or abuse, incest, and she like owns it.
Yeah,
like she knows that it's cathartic for people.
This is something to carry.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's wild to hear her talk, because you can tell that she's not naturally the kind of person that would. Yeah. She seems very calm.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem like Laura at all.
Yeah.
Like, she's a good actor. Hey, what do you know?
Yeah. Which is surprising. She hasn't done more.
Her career is wild.
Yeah.
Because she was in John Carpenter cast her in Vampires, which is not. It's not great, and it's not. It's unfortunate. Like, her role in that, doesn't suit her. But she's like in Winter's Bone. She's awesome. She's not in it for like a ton, but she's like one of the best parts of the movie. I mean, that's an awesome movie right there. But when I had the chance to see her in Olympia do a Q&A after.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, just like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I got to take my kid, and he hadn't gotten to see all of Twin Peaks yet, but I was like, listen, you got a chance to see Firewalk with Me in the theater and hear Cheryl Lee.
And the big spoiler of the show, so like you're able to watch this movie now.
Yeah, we like crammed as much Twin Peaks as we could before going to it. But so getting to hear her and take my kid, thinking like, this is what I watched when he was born.
Yeah,
intense. That's pretty good. Yeah. Pretty good. But all right, so let's see. So before this, so Lynch's career is really strange. Yeah. Right. But in this point, you could say that this is how it works, like in life, and certainly apparently in Hollywood, whatever. Like, you're up, you're down, in terms of perception.
He had a couple back-to-back films that were quite linear, though, and had themes of the absurd and surreal, but a couple like narrative films back to back to back. Yeah. And hadn't really made anything like Eraserhead since Eraserhead. Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah. No. That's right. And so he does, is in seasons 1 and 2, and that's its own dramatic story.
Wasn't really there for season 2.
Yeah,
working on Wild at Heart.
Yes. Yeah. And so in Wild at Heart, he wins the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, and it's like, I'm sure he won that just as much for Twin Peaks. Don't you? Probably. Yeah. Like, the audience loved Twin Peaks so much. Yeah. That they probably. I mean, Wild at Heart rules. Yeah. And it deserves its own specific episode. But so he's like
a career award of sorts.
Yeah. So he wins the Palme d'Or, even though the movie got like some people booed it and stuff.
A lot of people walked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an extreme movie.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But still, you get the height of this, and then Twin Peaks gets canceled, and then he decides to make a prequel, and
everyone's like,
they're like, what? Well, but the people didn't like. Kyle MacLachlan didn't really want to do it.
He agreed if he had he wanted to really just be in a small part because he didn't want to be typecast anymore.
Exactly.
He wanted to branch out, which we see him doing with a lot of silly roles after.
Yeah,
and just finished Sex in the City.
Nice. So he's like going to making The Doors and some stuff, but Showgirls, he's going to make Showgirls there not that long. I mean, a few years later. But anyways, so nobody's really all that excited about the show that flamed out in people's minds, and that had run out of gas, even though it really didn't. But and he decides to make this prequel, and then after the movie is a total, absolute, and critically and financially a total failure.
Yeah, a lot of drama on set too.
Is that right?
With actors, with the Man from Another Place, Anthony.
Oh yeah.
Michael Anderson.
They had like a falling out, or Michael Anderson.
Yeah. Some major falling out, and even just Kyle MacLachlan not wanting to be very much a part of it. It seems like it was a little bit of a stressful set. It's
cool how Kyle MacLachlan and Lynch were able to
move past that.
Yeah, like because they didn't work again until The Return.
The Return, yeah.
And so Fire Walk with Me is a huge commercial and critical failure.
Flop.
And then he makes in 1997. So he doesn't make a movie for 5 years. Now, knowing Lynch, well, I guess he did that Up in the Air show.
Oh yeah,
somewhere in there.
Needed a paycheck.
And that hotel room. Show.
Yeah.
But his next movie is Lost Highway, which was a big deal. I was like, that's 97. So that's the year I graduated high school. And
year I was born.
97. The big thing for us and my friends, because we were mostly music. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was super into movies, but music was like the main thing in high school.
Yeah.
And it was just like Nine Inch Nails. It was just like exciting that Trent Reznor was working with David Lynch.
Yeah.
And I didn't even see the movie, but I listened to the soundtrack. So I didn't see the movie till way later, which I found to be absolutely terrifying.
Scary.
And incomprehensible. And now, total joy.
Yeah.
Just pure enjoyment.
Yeah. I mean, that's a similar experience with Fire Walk with Me. Like, or a lot of his films, quite frankly, like really dark, intense moments, but you're on the edge of your seat, like,
and visually and sonically, the craft.
Yeah, it's all there. Yeah.
So, and then he ends up doing The Straight Story, which if there
after Lost Highway,
from Lost Highway to The Straight Story to Mulholland Drive, that's incredible. I mean, that's crazy.
Then Inland Empire, just this, he really found some momentum there.
And another thing about Lynch that's so cool is that he never allowed for Fire Walk with Me to be considered a failure because he knew it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then it just shows like there's so many of these movies that get lost.
Yeah.
Because when they come out, it's just not, they're not in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
This kind of, I think about Alex Cox's movie Walker, like Repo Man and Sid and Nancy are like in the zeitgeist. And then this movie Walker, this critique of American imperialism is like, people are like, they didn't let him make a movie again, basically, you know. Ishtar,
director
Elaine May.
Prison. Director jail.
Yeah, director jail, which happens to a lot of wonderful
Damien
filmmakers.
Chazelle comes to mind.
Is he in movie jail?
I kind of think he is after Babel.
Babylon.
Babylon, yeah.
It's on the shelf. Love Babylon.
Yeah.
I'm a huge defender of it.
But once again, I think it's going to have the Fire Walk with Me-ification, and it will come back.
It's funny to think that as much as Babylon has a lot of haters, still compared to Fire Walk with Me, it's like a huge success. Like in terms of, it did have good reviews and made some money. Yeah, whereas Fire Walk with Me is like
across the board. You're right.
Yeah, it made nothing. If you look, it's like incredible. It made like so little money. They just pulled it immediately out of the theaters, which is, it's kind of like weirdly what happened with like Donnie Darko. This is similar. You know, when you don't know what
we weren't ready for it yet.
Yeah. So, but it is cool how many of these movies get their next life, and people get their they get their reassessments.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just bring up, and then we'll get into some more like the content of the movie.
Of course.
I always like to think of movies in the context, obviously, of like what other movies are coming out. So I'm just going to name some movies from 1992.
What was on the marquee?
Yeah.
In 1992.
If you were going to the theaters, and the same year that you could see Fire Walk with Me, you could see Malcolm X.
Wow.
The biggest movie controversy of this era, Husbands and Wives. Woody Allen, Mia Farrow, literally breaking up during the movie being filmed. There's scenes you can tell that Mia Farrow does not want to be in the same room with him. It's also a great movie. The Player, which was Altman's big comeback.
Yeah.
Wayne's World.
Wow, that double feature.
Still great, yes. Unforgiven, which won like a lot of Oscars.
Yep.
Abel Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, there's another movie that holds up. Candyman.
Oh, wow.
Which is nice at how that movie is kept alive.
Yeah.
You know?
It really has, with the remake and whatnot. Mm-hmm. There's another one coming out, I feel like.
I liked it. I thought the remake was good.
A nice allegory.
Another in our time, Dracula, Coppola. So
really?
1992.
That was 92. Oh, what a fun time to be in the theater.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Deep Cover, Paul Schrader's Light Sleeper, Willem Dafoe. Still going
so strong. He had quite the year.
We got our Demi Moore. We got the Demi Moore revival right now. A Few Good Men, 1992.
Wow, that was 92.
Excellent movie. Actually, better than I remember.
You just rewatched, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fun. I mean, it's not really a serious movie.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore. Come on.
Who could ask for
Kevin
more?
Bacon.
Crazy.
Christopher Guest.
Insane.
In a non-comedic role. A few more. The Crying Game, which was like a phenomena.
Yeah.
That year. My Cousin Vinny.
Wow.
Singles, Seattle.
That was 92.
92. But it was like filmed in like 89 or something. It was one of those that.
Wow. So Seattle really was in the zeitgeist.
It's right. Yes.
Well, 92. What?
Twin Peaks,
Nirvana?
grunge, everything.
Yeah.
That's right.
The Cool Place to Be.
Batman Returns, Reservoir Dogs.
Wow.
White Men Can't Jump.
The beginning of like a new era of film.
Yeah. Pet Sematary 2. If you haven't seen it, it's actually pretty good. Basic Instinct.
Wow.
Sharon. Army of Darkness. Also a movie that's not that remembered now, but mega hit, The Bodyguard.
Wow.
With Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, which I saw in the theater with my dad. And of course, the legendary Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, which is like a disaster Sylvester Stallone comedy. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, what is that? What is that 1992? Fire Walk with Me does not seem like it's in there.
I mean, I think it does a little bit. There's some pretty brutal, there's some violence in there.
I guess like the Bad Lieutenant.
There's some anger. I mean, Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
Some Candyman. There's some bloody.
It's a pretty good year, really.
Pretty great year, yeah.
All right, so let's get into some of the content of Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah.
First of all, when Twin Peaks: The Return was announced.
Do you remember where you were? Because he tweeted. He said that David Lynch said the chewing gum you like is going to come back. And yes. I remember like everyone went crazy.
I couldn't, it was almost too much for me. I couldn't really accept it. I was like, I don't believe it.
It's like, what is this going to be?
It was a surprise. It was a big surprise.
Major surprise.
Yes.
We didn't think we'd really get anything.
I was just
from
like,
him.
Any movie, please.
Anything. Feed us, Lynch.
And I was even a little bit worried about it. Like Twin Peaks, I really thought, I wish he was just making a movie. Yeah. That wasn't.
He's working with Showtime again. So that was exciting.
Yeah.
Sticking to the same network.
Well, as soon as you started to hear the names and you started to hear names that weren't from the, like.
Or Naomi Watts.
Yeah. When you heard like.
Tim Roth was coming in.
Yes.
Some crazy names.
Even like, you're like, Michael Cera? And then you're just. That was one of the things that was so fun to watch it because you're like, wait,
Where
Robert Forster is going to be in this one?
Yeah.
And then you're just or like who are some of the famous oh man, what's her name from First Reformed? The blonde, blue-eyed.
Someone's yelling at their
Yeah.
screen.
Anyways, but like Caleb Landy Jones.
Well, a lot of what's his name? Dalmatian.
Oh yeah.
The owner of the casino.
The Late Night with the Devil guy.
Belushi is also.
Who I was like, what? Jim Belushi's going to be in this?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
He just played himself.
Fantastic.
In a brilliant way.
Jennifer Jason Leigh. You're like,
yes.
What is this? So
a lot of folks, I think, were chomping at the bit to be a part because it's almost like people knew that this is. It's like you got to be a part of this.
I feel like, by the way, in The Return, the Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tim Roth thing.
It's so Pulp Fiction.
I think that he is like giving an homage to Tarantino.
I think it is too.
Like, here's these two characters out of a Tarantino movie that are just thrown in here.
And the way they're speaking is almost...
She had just done The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
And Tim Roth has the whole history there. So
yeah.
It was truly delightful. But when I watched The Return, you realize that Fire Walk with Me is the key, not Twin Peaks the show.
Yes.
And if anything, The Return to me is like a sequel to every David Lynch movie and Twin Peaks, like all of it.
Yeah.
To Eraserhead, to like all of it.
It's literally the hotel key to the universe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Also, a little off track here with The Return, but like Inland Empire being this experiment of his that like this idea, because he believes in the unified field that like everything ultimately is connected, his like kind of mysticism that he has.
Yeah.
This belief that if he wrote different scenes, that they would ultimately connect, even if he didn't intentionally connect them.
Yeah.
You can, I mean, he always did that in his like the way he trusts his intuition.
Yeah.
And isn't worried about the logic necessarily, the plot or whatever. But with it feels like, I don't know if he could have made The Return if he hadn't made Inland Empire, because it also has that it's that trusting yourself, which is another lesson that we all need to learn from Lynch.
Yeah.
If you want to work on something, if you're not confident, if you don't trust yourself.
Yeah. What does Lynch say? He says, just do it. Like, it does not say the Nike slogan, but he pushes in a way of just create because you can. Don't. I think a big motto in Fire Walk with Me is self-hatred and self-loathing consumes a person.
Yep.
It's a disease, an illness. You need to pull yourself from that in any way that you can, because if not, it'll kill you slowly, like Sarah Palmer, or brutally and swift, like Laura. You know.
The filmmakers who like young people who want to make films or anything, doesn't need to be films, like the filmmakers that really can teach us that it's not about like the industry and commodity and all this, but like if you look at Rainer Werner Fassbinder, you just make it. Yeah. This budget, that budget, whatever.
Just do it.
Werner Herzog says, steal a camera, steal equipment.
Yes.
Do whatever you got to make your movie.
Yeah.
John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins being like, almost all their movies are filmed inside their house.
Yeah.
You know, like what, the Letterboxd top 4 things that's always on Instagram and different things.
Yeah.
I'm amazed I'm not surprised how many people have Lynch movies. I'm amazed how many like people under like 30 talking about John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins. Yeah. Because like we're in this era where people have realized, I think that, I mean, obviously digital cameras and stuff have made it possible. And then you go, I mean, even for me, like, not like we should be like making movies, right?
Yeah.
Like basically, but like, I feel guilty when I watch a Cassavetes film and think we have all this equipment.
Yeah.
And they would just make it with like whatever they had. Anyway, I think that's another reason why Lynch inspires people, because and by the way, confidence.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like people, when they like the philosopher Kierkegaard has the term, the leap of faith, that people totally misunderstand. But like an artist has to make the leap of faith to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you don't think you are, then
you need to believe in the project and the characters. And it's so evident Lynch believes specifically in Laura. And I think that's why the movie works so well, because he cares about her. He loves her. She is real. She is a real person. And you even see that in how he speaks to Cheryl Lee and even directs her in The Return, when a lot of those behind the scenes came out. It's like he's so gentle with her, even with Kyle, with any actor that consistently works with him. There's this gentle way of him speaking, because imagine being him, like seeing your characters come alive in that way, and being able to interact with them and communicate with them, and that means a lot to him.
That's the I mean, and I get that stuff, because like for me, movies are reality.
Yeah.
Like, and when I say that, I mean, and this is why I've joked, but I'm not really joking, that to me, David Lynch is probably he's amongst the most realistic filmmakers.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the arts are about showing as opposed to explaining. Right?
Yeah.
And like what Lynch does is show what it's like to suffer, to be afraid, to be in love, to be idealistic, to be naive, to be curious, to be a voyeur, to be a sadist.
Or a masochist.
I mean, this is another reason why, I mean, when you're watching Blue Velvet and Frank Booth, Dennis Hopper shows up.
You are Jeffrey.
Yeah. So then you have to project, because Lynch's films are full of sadism and masochism. And one thing that people, I feel like in the language of sadism and masochism, there's a few like misconceptions the way we talk about them now.
Oh, of course.
One meaning that it always means sex. It doesn't.
It does not.
Yeah. And two, sadism and masochism, when it's like BDSM, is full of like all these consensual boundaries.
That's the major
part. That's the
whole
thing.
That's the whole part of why it's so exciting.
But oftentimes our sadism and masochism, most of the time, are not in a context of consent and communication. No. They're unconscious, and we're doing them, and we're maybe not even meaning to. This is straight up Freud too. Like Freud has, had to account for sadistic and masochistic impulses, which we all have.
Yes.
And in a Lynch movie, you're going to get confronted with a lot of both.
Yes. And
those lines blurring and getting weird and getting ambiguous ethically and things like that. And a character like Kyle MacLachlan, who's like Jeffrey, who just wants to watch.
But he like later in the film, when they really have sex, Jeffrey and Dorothy. Yeah.
They totally named her after the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. I just hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
She says, "Hit me," and he's like, "No, I don't want to hit you."
Nope.
But he does. He wants to hit her, but he says no. But then later in the movie he does. Hit her.
Yes.
And I think Jeffrey is such an impressive character. We're talking about Fire Walk with Me, but Blue Velvet, you can't talk about anything Twin Peaks without Blue Velvet. Some would say it is the prequel to the prequel of Dale Cooper's story. But we are Jeffrey. We are interacting with Dorothy and her saying, "Hit me," and us being like, "I don't want to hit you, but I kind of do," And
it's unlocking maybe things that he doesn't know about in himself.
Exactly.
But he can't just be a voyeur. He doesn't choose to get involved.
Yeah.
He gets discovered. Yeah. And then once he's discovered, he can't just watch anymore.
Yeah. He's
involved.
Involved in it. Yep.
And then he has to and then when he does hit her, which the movie I believe presents as not a appropriate form of BDSM.
Yeah,
right?
We're hearing animal sounds, and it slows down, and it's giving us the impression of this is a little bit monster adjacent. Like it's scary. Dorothy's not really into it.
Well, and coming back to like Fire Walk with Me, we have scenes where even Laura is moving back and forth between yes and no,
Yeah.
and to like being tied up,
Yeah.
which is like really awful. in
Or
the
at
movie.
moments with Bob of
Mm,
we're seeing, you should have watched the movie.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert now, of Bob and her sounding like it is consensual, and then it changing to Leland, and then back to Bob, and then back and forth. So we know that within Laura, I think this is why there's a lot of self-hatred in her and why she seeks out self-destructive behaviors, because there is a knowing of what is happening to her. And this monster she knows is her dad. And so she blurs lines between projecting this unbelievable hatred that is being done to her on something else, on this monster named Bob, rather than just saying, oh, it's my dad. So we see that battle back and forth of her unsure.
And this is another thing that I think why so many people resonate with Lynch is because he portrays spiritual characters like demonic and angelic figures, and even other figures that are just like ambiguous, like we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Some seeming only almost amoral, not immoral or not good or bad.
Like all the characters in the lodge.
Exactly. Like they're operating in a different.
All the characters in the convenience store.
Yes.
You know, like are they good or evil?
And but his portrayal of spiritual, what I think he would view as spiritual realities, if you listen to him, he's adamant that he believes in angels and he believes in the soul and he believes in afterlife and all these things. Yeah. But you don't need to believe those things to feel it in a Lynch movie, because you can interpret all of this. You can interpret Bob as something, a combination of like something she needs to make up to deal with the trauma of incest.
Yeah.
You could view Bob as like a mental illness in Leland, or you can view Bob as a demon that has possessed Leland.
Literal. Yeah.
Yes. And he just lets you. And same thing with Mulholland Drive. Same thing, like the spirituality in his films. And like Fire Walk with Me, again, spoiler, the ending. Yeah. She is with an angel.
Yes.
And she is crying and laughing with an angel and Kyle.
And in my opinion, looks like she's watching TV.
Huh. I guess you're right. There is
just just from the beginning of the film, we see we're hyper zoomed in on that blue static, and then the smashing of the TV. The end of the film, we see that blue static on her face. And so I kind of interpret that of her watching television in a way.
Which I just heard. I'm not going to get this quote quite right. I don't remember who said it. I was reading a biography about the political philosopher Hannah Arendt, and she was referencing the statement that all sorrow and grief can be, I'm not going to get this quite right, but it's like a famous quote.
Yeah.
But like basically all pain and suffering can be redeemed if it's put into a story.
What it feels like.
It's something like all sorrows can be born if they're put into a story.
Yeah.
And so if Laura, even at the end, is seeing her life as a story.
Like I kind of view it as she's watching the series.
Yeah.
Like the original. And she's laughing. She's laughing and crying and looking at Cooper, and Cooper's looking down at her, hand on the shoulder, like, yes. Like, look at how silly.
That's good.
It's a little bit of a chronically online take that a lot of people have presented as a literal interpretation of the film, and so I'm a little conflicted feeling that way.
Yeah,
because I do like to experience the film in a little bit of a broad way and not make everything quite literal.
Yeah.
But it's just for fun.
Well, and the return, like, so the idea in Fire Walk with Me, if we're just taking the movie directly, if we're saying in this movie Leland is possessed by Bob,
yes,
and she's being raped by her dad. It's like the worst thing ever. And then this idea that Bob wants to possess her so that she can continue the repetition of suffering and causing violence. Yeah. Her choice to say no to like this generational repetition,
generational abuse, generational trauma. Yeah.
Like she dies for it.
Yeah.
And in the return, this gets like elevated to a whole nother cosmic level of what is this kind of, and I mean, to me, I mean, again, this is a lot, we're talking a lot about other Lynch, but again, it's all
But
related.
it's all connected. Yeah.
I mean, I read all this as, I mean, to me, the real symbol of goodness, because Lynch's films, this is one thing Roger Ebert, who trashed Blue Velvet, and thought it was offensive.
Yeah.
The thing that he hated was he thought that the optimistic parts, like when Laura Dern's talking about the robins.
Yes.
Ebert interpreted this as like making fun of her.
Yeah.
But when you know Lynch, it's completely sincere.
Yes.
The angel at the ending of Fire Walk with Me is not camp.
No.
It's absolute earnestness. Lynch believes that like the good in the end, like wins.
The light will overpower the dark. Every time.
He does. And even the movies of his where like that have a lot less light.
Like a Mulholland Drive.
Or like a Lost Highway.
Yes.
Yeah, movies that are, I guess it's because they're basically tragedies.
Yes.
Those films, really. But they're still profoundly moral.
Yeah.
Especially Lost Highway. I mean, if you think about it. So the realism of Lynch in terms of not having to literally believe in angels or demons and spirits and ghosts and God and devils and whatever. But whether or not you believe in those things, like human beings have had concepts of these things across time and culture. Yeah. Just like we find these monsters.
Because it's easier to project a monster, create a monster as an excuse for humans evil doing. I mean, the quote Albert says, like, what if Bob is just the evil that men do?
Yeah.
Like, what if?
Well, and then the return and the atomic bomb really like,
which is, some would say, the biggest evil that man has done.
Certainly.
Yeah.
But like again, with Lynch, you can view these things as symbolic.
Yes.
Or literal. And he gives you that room.
And you get as much out of it in both, which I think is so respectful to the viewer. Because he did a talk that I saw recently that came up on social media after his passing, talking about how the viewer is the most important piece of a film.
Yep.
That he leaves quite a bit for us to do. And you feel that, you see that. And I think some people are yearn for that kind of film. And I think that's why a lot of people maybe aren't as much of a Lynch fan, because some people don't crave that.
Yep.
They don't want to do any of that.
Simplicity.
Yeah. They still can enjoy a Lynch film. But I think the folks that they keep coming back to David Lynch, they have that desire.
Because Lynch is the kind of filmmaker that every time you watch a movie, he gives you so much room for you to project.
And whoever you're bringing to that moment, because we're ever evolving.
Exactly.
Like multiple times watching the Twin Peaks series, you get a little bit of something different every time. And he did that on purpose.
And then I mentioned him before, but I don't want to sound too much like the obvious like movie nerd thing or whatever, but like Kubrick.
We're way past that.
Yeah, well, Kubrick and Lynch's movies all being very different on the one hand, but like what's this very similar about them is the amount of ambiguity that they have.
Yeah.
So that when you go back every time, especially if a significant amount of time has gone by.
Yeah.
Like I hadn't seen Clockwork Orange since I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I did not like it when I was in high school. I thought it was gross and I didn't really get it. I felt that way about Taxi Driver in high school too. Honestly, I wasn't ready for what those movies are about because they're complex.
Yes.
And watching Clockwork Orange again, I had the exact opposite. It was like, this is one of the most like moral movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because of what it's dealing with such difficult moral questions. And Lynch's movies tend to be like that too. Even though they're full of like extreme stuff that
extreme, the pendulum swings.
Yes.
Many a time.
Yes. And both in terms of mood and tone, but also extreme in terms of sex and violence. I mean, when you watch Wild at Heart, you go, I mean, was that necessary to show that like that? And it's like, I mean, there's no answer to that question, except Lynch thought that it was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and Fire Walk with Me too is like, it's so brutal, it's so rough.
Yeah.
It's like weirdly kind of restrained, also
tightly bound.
Yeah,
like it's there's control there.
It's, and we got to say about Cheryl Lee, like,
yeah,
I mean, this is one of those performances, you know, that there's just not that many of them.
Yeah.
Like what she carries into the movie, it's like the same. It's similar to how people feel about like Isabella Johnny in Possession, or something.
It's like she was made for this.
Yeah, and just and you see what the actor is giving, and you just wonder, how did they do that, like emotionally?
You believe it. Like, that is Laura Palmer. She is being systematically abused by her father and this town. Like, she is real.
It's also funny to think that, like, she originally was cast just for the picture.
Yeah.
And to be in the plastic.
But he liked her so much.
He liked her, and he brought her back as the cousin, as Maddie.
Yes.
But
from Montana.
if what Cheryl Lee is really iconic for, besides that image and the image of her with the homecoming crown on or whatever, is her scream.
The scream.
How, and he couldn't have known that.
Yeah.
Like, and if anybody's seen Blowout, like the importance of the scream.
Yeah.
And she's got the scream. I mean, and The Return, both Fire Walk with Me and The Return, her scream is like essential to this resistance.
Yeah.
To evil.
Yes. It's her physically fighting back. Her literal energy, her electricity fighting against the evil.
And by the way, and I will absolutely bring up like politics and stuff on these, like she's a reminder of how to say no.
Yeah.
And specifically, say no to evil. And in this case, what? She's saying no to an evil male authority figure. Yeah. So that's, I mean, she's inspiring to all of us in terms of just like saying no.
Yeah. And then to be sad, morbid about it, also a reminder that sometimes saying no doesn't get you very far.
Yeah, you don't always win.
Yeah.
By saying no to evil. Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. In this world.
Yeah.
What are some other like stuff that you were thinking about here?
Yeah, I have my lovely notebook with all of my thoughts and opinions. I mean, I think we should talk about, well, in my opinion, one of the greatest things Lynch has put on film, the sequence of Laura's night out, where she goes from the Roadhouse to the club to the Canadian border bar.
Yes.
And how that starts with her encounter with the log lady.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
The log lady's quote about innocence, the loss of innocence.
The scene,
and then walking into Julie Cruz.
That's so beautiful. That whole two things about when they go to the bar, the scary bar.
Yeah.
One is when I was like 15 or 16 or something, I had like TV on, and that scene was on, and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And literally, there's the scene is when the guy who goes underneath the table, and is like pleasuring both women at the same time or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Buck.
What is this?
Yeah.
You know, I was
that psychedelic jazz.
But it was scary. I was like, oh, I don't know. That's like
scary.
Sexy, but it's scary. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so later when I saw the movie, I was like, oh my God, I saw that scene.
Yeah.
Before. The other great story is that when they were doing that scene, Lynch wanted them to film a bunch of cigarettes and Rainier cans on the floor.
Yeah.
And they tell the story of like the people working on the movie, like they went to all these different bars collecting cigarette butts and Rainier cans. And then we get that
authentic Seattle
shot.
dive.
And yeah, I forgot. I can't remember. Is this Engels? What's the name of this? The cinematographer. I can't remember the name of the cinematographer. The cinematography in this movie.
Remarkable.
This era of Wild at Heart and Fire Walk with Me, the color.
Yeah.
It's like peak to me. It's like peak cinematography.
Yeah.
Up there with, whatever.
There's this warmth to it.
The fire. It's the look of the fire.
Exactly.
There's so many like side angles with this, but yes, this whole sequence. Of course, this movie has awesome music.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, because we're first, after we encounter the log lady and we go inside, we're introduced to the Roadhouse, a place that we're very familiar with. Julie Cruz is singing. And then after that, we proceed to this Canadian border bar that is unlike anything that we've seen in this world, where they're playing this music that is so different, the pink room. The people that are, besides Jacques Renault, we don't know anybody that's here. It's the complete opposite, and I think that's a lot of Fire Walk with Me, is this weird alternate universe, like even Deer Meadow, the police station,
the Shadow,
or Hap's Diner, I think the name is.
Oh yeah.
Everything is this weird, disgusting twist of the sweet Twin Peaks, quote unquote, sweet exterior of Twin Peaks that we know. And even going back to when we're introduced to Chester Desmond, his initials are literally Dale Cooper's flipped.
I hadn't thought about that.
And he's everything that Cooper isn't. He's this nonchalant, suave, cool, maybe even a little mean.
Kind of stoic.
To
Kiefer.
Sam. There's almost this meanness. It's the complete opposite. And for the first 45 minutes to an hour of the movie, it's them.
And the first time you see the movie, you're like, if you're going straight from Twin Peaks,
you're like,
it's very, but it's
Teresa Banks. What?
And I love this section of the movie.
I do.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's the part of the movie that we get more of the comedy, and then we get the trailer park, Harry Dean Stanton. We get the flashes of the Bowie character.
Yeah.
This movie takes you for a ride.
They introduce, because we see Cooper, Cole, Albert, everybody at the Philadelphia office, and we see Bowie, everybody, Philip Jeffries. But the moment that is, I think, the heart of this creation is when Albert is talking to Cooper and it's like, oh, and Cooper's like, oh, I had a dream the other night about a girl. She's sexually active. She's using hard drugs. Albert's like, you could be talking about every girl in America. And Cooper's like, I think this is going to happen again. And we get the Angelo's music cue, and we see the entrance of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And we see Laura walking down the street.
Yeah. And it is. Yeah. It's like
and
45 minutes.
It snaps us out of it and reminds us, oh shit, this is what I'm watching.
Yeah.
Oh shit, this movie's going to end and she's going to die.
Yep.
And for much of that 45 minutes, you're thinking, oh, maybe this is an alternate universe where she doesn't, which he touches on in The Return.
Exactly.
But of course, because the mind goes there, but it plays with your expectations so brilliantly and respectfully. And I don't think I've ever seen a prequel quite like that. As I said at the beginning, prequels now, there's just a little bit of anger. The director telling the audience, hey, like, fuck you for putting the previous movie at this high caliber. The movie that comes to mind is Joker and then Folie à Deux. People held the original film at such a high caliber and felt such a certain way about it, almost idolizing it or the character. And then not a prequel, but it's more so sequel comes out with Lady Gaga, and it's him speaking to the audience in such an angry way, the director,
yeah,
that it you don't see that in Lynch movies.
No.
There's as I've said quite a bit, there's just such a mutual respect and relationship between viewer and film, and open communication.
And ultimately, it's because Lynch is not a cynic.
Yeah.
He's not cynical.
Yeah.
I will watch that Joker movie, the whatever.
Folie à Deux.
Yeah, I'll watch it at some point. I'll have to be in a very hate myself kind of.
I mean, Gaga,
mode.
I think she was pretty great, fun, silly. She has a fabulous voice. She's such a performer. It's just a little bit. It's just strange.
Well, those movies seem so profoundly unnecessary.
Yeah,
it was really like. I watched the first Joker movie, and it was the whole time it's fine. It's it's as far as the movie goes, on its own or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like why make this? I don't.
It's almost a good comparison. That movie that has a lot of really tough, dark themes about a man being systematically kind of neglected and abused by society. But there's no hope. And the film is almost rooted in him being this like hopeful for the future beacon of revolution. But there's no hope. Whereas in Fire Walk with Me, there is so much hope. And she is this martyr. She becomes that.
And this goes back to whatever this word you want this word, anyone to mean. Yeah. It's the spirituality aspect of Lynch films. Like that hope, the fact that he's not a cynic is related to a certain type of perspective about the world that is that's spiritual and hopeful.
Yeah.
But without a denial of all the reality of the suffering and the evil. And this, if anything, Lynch movies are about how do you live in a world with such beauty and such ugliness?
Yeah. Because that's what, at least I grapple with that every day, especially now.
and how do you, and what about when you see that, like, you have, like Kyle MacLachlan in Blue Velvet, like, like, the seed, the potential for evil is in me too.
It's in everybody.
Of course.
Yep.
Well, we've gone for a while here. I feel like we should do a few last thoughts. There's no way to properly, we're going to be talking about Fire Walk with Me and Twin Peaks and Lynch the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So do you have any other just really have to say?
Yeah. I think we could both talk about why this movie is something that sticks around in both of our minds, and why is it so good?
Yes.
And why do some people just don't think it's so good?
Yeah.
For me personally, I think seeing a film depict such gruesome acts of violence, and there are other films that come to mind like Possession. Possession specifically, actually, because also spoiler alert, that weird tentacle monster a little bit later in the movie. As someone who has experienced unfortunate events in my life, and has experienced a lot of therapy, and I love therapy. I tell everyone to try it at least once, because I think you'll get a lot out of it. Being able to emotionally contextualize and not necessarily compartmentalize, but be able to kind of move those really hard, difficult emotions through your brain and through speech and visual media, I think can be really beneficial. And seeing a movie like Fire Walk with Me, where Lynch is tackling a lot of painful things, and being able, as a woman, seeing this girl experience this and come out the other side. She does die, but there is this hope throughout, and it's reassuring that despite the hardness and the dark times, that there is always light, and there is always an angel. or an ancestor or some sort of deity looking out for you. And it helps me with processing grief and pain by being able to separate myself from it a little bit and have it be outside of myself. That it's not like Bob. Laura isn't Bob.
Yeah.
Bob is Bob. So I'm able to take my own issues and view it as Bob.
Yeah.
And not me. It hasn't consumed me. I am not this bad thing that happened to me.
Yes.
I think there have been a couple films that do that beautifully, that you are not the bad things that have happened to you.
Yep.
That does not define you. They happen to you, they are around, they are a monster under your bed, but it's not you. I think the movie does a great job doing that.
Yeah. It makes me think about when I think about Firewalk, and it goes back to that thing of like, if you can find a way to tell a story of what you've been through, like that is catharsis.
Yes.
And yeah, beautifully said.
Thank you.
I think for me with Firewalk with me is it's one of the prime examples I can think of movies doing exactly like the thing I want movies to do the most, which is a combination of two things. And one is I watch movies for craft. I want to see beautiful, like cool, exciting cinematography.
Yeah.
I don't want to see very much special effects, especially if it's CGI and computer stuff. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I want to see human faces in fresh ways, which like we get the scene in this when her and Donna are lying down and they're talking about the angels and all that.
Moving through space.
Yeah.
Would you go faster and faster? Would you slow down?
And the way the camera films their faces.
Yeah. It's
like, I don't know how Lynch and his cinematographer got these. It's like the most beautiful cinematography. He makes everybody look amazing, you know?
Yeah. Like Donna's Laura's upside down or something. And Donna,
like Donna's on the couch, I think, and Laura's on the floor or whatever.
Yeah.
But so like this movie delivers the craft in terms of the cinematography, the sound, all the wonderful actors, everything. But it's craft and catharsis.
Yes.
Like I want to be surprised for one thing when I watch a movie.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes I'll watch, I think a lot of cinephiles that like kind of wacko movies that aren't necessarily great with craft, but like they're just fun to watch because they're surprising.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why people want to go see The Substance too. Like I want to be surprised. I want to see something different.
Yes.
And so but also the catharsis of because even though I'm not a young woman like Cheryl Lee, Laura Palmer, I relate to Laura and feel great comfort via her, and yes, a cathartic victory at the end of this.
Yeah, the laughing, crying at the end with Cooper there, because he knows that's like, we want Cooper there for this important moment with Laura, and they're there together.
It's kind of a shock the first time. You just can't think, how could this movie end with a happy ending? Like, how could that, which I would not call it exactly a happy ending, but I mean, it basically is.
I mean, not a textbook, like she does die brutally.
It's just, again,
and
that
Cooper has yet to even come to Twin Peaks. Yeah. And all of that is going to begin.
And this is all the time.
Yeah.
Because the return gets all wild with time.
Yeah.
In a way that I just still can't,
wrap my head around.
Yeah. Of course, we know, time is subjective to a degree. So, another thing of maybe like the literalism of time not making sense, but the experience of time, the way we experience it, maybe does.
Yes.
Including other versions of ourselves, like obviously Lynch, doppelgangers, shadows, triples. Like, we all have multiple parts of ourselves. And if we would have made different decisions, we would be different people on that path.
Exactly.
For this.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
But also a little comforting. Because every decision that I've been thinking about that a lot recently, of a lot of despite where we are right now, like all of those decisions that we've made have led us to this moment of filming this, you know?
Yeah.
And whether it be good or bad decisions, it's here we are. And I think I can't, final thoughts, I guess, to carry something I carry with me every single day is every day give yourself a treat. And that decision of doing that for yourself is your radical act against the darkness of the world. And whatever that treat may be, maybe it is coffee and pie, a little bit of the dark, a little bit of the light, you know, being able to balance that within yourself every day to make that decision, because you could easily succumb to darkness.
Yes.
You could easily do that, as Jeffrey experiences, as Laura, but you have to make the decision every day to fight against it.
Which is a position of hope.
Yes.
That's what hope is right there.
And every day gets a little bit easier.
And I think for me, it reminds me that just like resistance is not futile. Like it's worth resisting even when you lose.
Yes.
It's still worth it. And whether or not you want to have a perspective like of Lynch, who does believe in like afterlife, that the story isn't over with Laura, not really. Or you don't believe in afterlife, whatever. Either way, to believe that like it is worth resisting evil. Like, and what is evil? Evil is that which causes suffering. That's it. And so like when suffering is being caused, we should be screaming.
Yeah. And it's
like
so
Laura.
worth it, because if you don't resist, you don't experience the friendship, the pleasure, the love, the beauty, the pie. You know, you don't get those amazing things.
Yeah. And the joy and the simple joys, like the affirmation of like, yeah, this big resistance to evil, but also enjoy your pie.
Exactly.
Have a good time.
Yeah, but also enjoy your coffee. Because you need the bitter, you need the dark with the light.
And then later, Lynch, enjoy your red wine. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we're going to be doing more of these. This was just this is our first go at it, but I know we're going to be like, oh, I can't believe we didn't talk about that. But you know what? There are limitations in life, including limitations of time.
Well, it makes sense though, because as we were saying earlier, like every time you return to a piece that he makes, you bring something new. And we're, of course, later in the day, I'll be like, oh, fuck, I forgot to talk about that. But the beauty of Lynch.
Yep. So yeah, we're going to be doing more of these and more. Just it's all about love of movies. We don't have our next movie picked out yet. So
if you have any requests,
we'll take requests.
We'll see, but I think we have a couple in mind.
Oh yeah, for sure. Isabel, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, and thank you all.